Hey crafty friends, thank you very much for joining me. This is Einat Kessler with Saturday Extravaganza, and I have all kinds of matchboxes here, and you probably guessed what we're gonna make today. We're gonna make a vanity from 10 matchboxes. So we're gonna start by inking all the matchboxes fronts with some black StazOn ink. And the reason we're going to do that, we're going to cover the front with some paper, with pattern paper, but we want the edges to look really nice and uniform, and I don't want any white to show, so I'm going to cover it with black StazOn. You can actually do it with your marker, but I just like to start with the StazOn and then move on. So do that to all your matchboxes, and now I like to go in with the marker, just fill in all the spaces that were not covered by the ink, and of course the upper part of the matchbox, so when you open it, it will also be black, and also the edges, the front edges of the box itself, because you know a matchbox has the outer casing and the, let's call it the drawer, the box that opens. So we want the entire front to look completely black, see? And you want to do that to all 10 matchboxes, so they'll all look uniform. So once we've done that, we can go ahead and cut our pattern paper pieces, and I already cut them. Now you have to remember that matchboxes come in different sizes, so it's really hard for me to tell you what size you should cut. You should measure the front of your matchbox, the part that slides out, and then cut the piece of paper accordingly. Mine was 3/8 of an inch by 1 1/4 of an inch, but you have to measure yours and see what the size is. So I'm gonna excuse me, I have all the front of the matchboxes here, and I already organized them in the order that I want them to be on my vanity, so that helps a lot. It's a tip for you. Play with all your drawer fronts, and then after you like the order, you just glue them to the front of your drawers. I'm using the Station by MME, the paper collection. It's all reds and blacks, and it has a vintagey look that you know I love. So these papers were perfect for me, so I'm gonna finish with all the fronts, and now I have all the fronts of my drawers ready. See? Oops, sorry, that fell. All of them ready, and this is the order they're gonna be in. Now we can move on to our next part, and that's creating the handles to open our drawers. Now I'm using an old necklace. Don't worry, they're not real pearls, just plastic. And as you can see, they have different, the necklace has different sizes of beads, so I'm gonna go for this size here, and each little bead like that is going to be the handle in which I'm gonna open the drawer with. So I'm just gonna get rid of the smaller ones because I need 10. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue in the center of the front of my matchbox, and then stick a nice bead on it. Now this has to dry completely, otherwise you will pull it and it will stay in your hand, so make sure everything is dry before you continue, and make sure to keep the order that you decided, so it will be easier. So now all my drawers have handles, and we can start cutting our pieces of paper for the inside. Now you can go ahead and cover the entire drawer inside and out. I just didn't want to do that. I just wanted to cover the inside, the bottom of the box. You can go ahead and do all sides as well, but I didn't. So again, I can't tell you the measurement because each Matchbox has different size, but I'll tell you anyway. Mine was 1/15/16 of an inch by 1 1/4 of an inch. So just measure the inside of your Matchbox, and then you can cut all your little pieces to go in there. And again, I'm using the same pattern papers, so everything will be the coordinate. And also what I want to make sure is that I'm not using the same pattern paper as the front. So if I use, let's say, the black paper with the white dots on the front, I'm going to use a different one in the inside, so everything will look nice and, you know, different, but still coordinating with all the papers. So you just glue those in, and actually the sides are, it's not too bad if they're not covered. It looks really fine to me. Don't forget to keep the order. Of course you can always change it later, but it's easier that way. So all my inner drawers are now covered. Now it's time to glue the boxes together. So I'm starting with the two bottom boxes, and I'm gluing them down. Now it's very important to align them really well and make sure everything is straight, because you want a straight vanity and you don't want it to be crooked or something. Next, two boxes, you just go in pairs and add two boxes each time and align them from all sides. Make sure they're all nice and straight, because Matchboxes, I don't know if you've noticed, they are not the straightest thing in the world, so you have to align them really well. Their corners are sometimes not very sharp, I mean not exactly 90 degrees, and they're not very straight. So when you glue them down, make sure everything is nice and straight so it will look good once it's ready. So our vanity is taking shape, and this is how it looks after all the boxes are glued down together. And make sure that dries well too before we move on to our next step. Now I like to cover my vanity from all sides with chipboard. Some people just cover it with paper. I like it to be a little bit, you know, firmer and stronger, and just give it a nice even walls from all sides with some chipboard. So what you would need to do, we're going to start with the sides. So you have to measure your side and cut two pieces of chipboard according to the size that you measured. Mine was 2.5 inches by 2 1/16 of an inch, but again you would have to measure, because like we said in the beginning, Matchboxes have different sizes. Different companies have different sizes, different countries have different sizes, so make sure you measure everything and it will be great. So we're gonna glue this piece to the side and then another piece to the other side. Now I'm gonna tell you in a minute why I start with the sides. We want to have a nice even look to our vanity, and chipboard also has you know, it's thick. It's about 1/16 of an inch, but it adds to your final measurements. So we're going to cover both sides first. Make sure you align it and it's straight, and reaches the edges. See? Now if you measure the width now after covering two sides with chipboard, you will have the width of the vanity plus the width of the chipboard. So that's why you have to, especially in the bottom and on the top, so you have to measure everything. You see there's a little bit of extra, 1/16 of an inch on each side has now been added to our measurements. So you have to do it in stages. Do the sides first, then the bottom, and then the top. So now I'm measuring the bottom, just writing here on a piece of chipboard, and I'm gonna cut it to size, because if you would have measured the vanity in advance without taking into account the extra measurements of the chipboard, then you would get an uneven vanity and your chipboard pieces would be too small. That's why I'm saying do it in stages and always measure. And another tip for you to measure, if you want a straight line, remember at school, straight line goes through 2 dots, not 1. When you measure, always have 2 dots and you'll have a straight line. So I've cut 2 pieces, one for the top and one for the bottom, because they are now the same size exactly. And I'm gonna glue down the bottom first and then align it to all sides, the front, the sides, the back, and everything. And then the upper part I'm gonna glue down the top now of the vanity. And I always make sure, by opening one drawer, I always make sure that I know which way is up, because after you've turned it so many times you can get confused and then put the legs in the wrong place, and that's annoying. So if you need to leave one drawer open just to make sure which way is up, then do that. So I have my vanity covered now with chipboard from all sides. See how nicer it looks? Straight and strong and firm and even. So now I'm gonna paint the front of the chipboard pieces with my black marker. And even if you have some little spots that are not black, then you go ahead and do that as well. So just cover it all with black, so the front will be nice and even on all sides and all parts of it, because we don't want to see any orange that was on the Matchbox and white and, you know, parts that are not black. So you just add that, do that, see how nice it looks. Now we're gonna cover our chipboard with the pieces of paper from the same collection. Of course, we want everything to be from the same collection. And now what I would like to do here is not cut. I'm gonna take a piece of pattern paper and I'm gonna glue it down on whatever side that I'm working on. Let it dry for a few seconds and then cut around it, because the last thing you want is that you measured it and something happened and then you have a really tiny part that is not covered. So you want to make sure everything is to the edges, align it really well. See, the piece of pattern paper is bigger than the piece I need. I'm gonna use my bone folder to burnish it really well, glue it down really well. And then once it's dry, I can cut around it with my craft knife. And now I'm sure that everything is completely covered with the pattern paper. If you want to measure it first and glue it down later, that's, you know, of course you can do that. But this is the way I like to do it, because then I'm sure. Just another cut. And see, now it's nice and covered on all sides. Gonna do the same on the sides. I'm not gonna bother with covering the bottom. Nobody's gonna see the bottom. There's no point in covering it. It's, you know, save your paper. So again, I'm gluing down a piece of paper, and then after a few seconds that it's starting to dry, I'm gonna cut around it, and this way it's gonna be accurate. See how nice that is? Again, I want to use the word love there, so I have to make sure that it's going to be the right side up. So that's why I've opened one of the drawers, just to make sure that I know which way is up and which is not. Align your paper and then just cut around it with your craft knife. Just a little bit of excess glue that I need to remove, and then cut. See how lovely that looks? And now we can go ahead and even paint that little white border now that you have, because you know the core of your paper is white and you don't want the white to show, so just go ahead with your marker and paint that as well. And I'm just gonna ink all the corners where the black stays on. So it will all have black corners. So now see how good it looks? So now we can go ahead and attach our legs. I have some black beads here, which I'm going to put on the bottom as legs. Of course you can use whatever legs you have, you know, Tim Holtz legs or whatever, but if you use Tim Holtz, you would have to make the bottom much thicker, otherwise when you glue down the legs you couldn't open the drawers. And that's another completely different thing. So I rather use these beads here as legs. So now we're going to start with our back side. I have a piece of chipboard here, which is much lighter because I want to cut it, and I want the back to be taller than the vanity because I want to create a pattern on the back side, on the top back side. So what I'm going to do is just trace around my vanity so I'll know the width of the back. And I have here just a piece of you know, of just gonna cut that first. I have a piece of just a word, you know, a title that has nice edges. This is gonna be in the back, see? And I just wanna make sure it's exactly the same size. And now I'm going to measure the height just with a little piece of just a pencil, just a little tiny piece there. This is my mark here. And now this is the title that I was talking about. See how nice the edges are, and I'm just going to trace them down, and I'm going to trace them about ½ an inch higher than the mark I did with the pencil. So this is going to be the back side of our vanity, and I'm just going to cut it with my scissors. This is again a much lighter chipboard that is easier to cut with scissors. The previous one that I've used could not be cut with scissors. This was too thick. So I'm cutting this, and again remember it's taller than the back side. See, this is how it's gonna go. we have to cover it with paper first, and then cut the paper again according to the pattern that we traced and cut on the chipboard. Make sure you use enough glue. There's a part there that is sticking out. I'm gonna adjust that. And now just cut around, and you will have your back side covered completely. So you can glue it down to the back of your vanity. So this is the back side now. I'm just gonna ink the edges, of course. And now I'm ready to glue it down. Now you put glue only on the outer parts of the vanity. I'm pushing my drawers a little bit because I don't want them by accident to get some glue on them and stick to the back, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to open them. So you just put no glue on the drawers or in the back side of the drawers, just on the parts in between. Okay, make sure, otherwise they will get stuck, they will get glued down. And I'm gonna glue this down. Make sure it's aligned and straight, and then let it dry. After it's dry, we can start adding my embellishment. This is a bezel that has a shape of a mirror, and it's very it almost looks like a mirror and works like a mirror. So I'm gonna add this in the middle there with a 3D foam tape. Just gonna cut the corners of the foam tape because I don't want them to show. So you can have a little mirror. This is from plastic, it's not a real mirror, but works really well. Gonna align it to the center and then glue it down. And now I have my mirror. And for my other embellishments, I'm going to show you what I did. I took another bezel and I cut out the little hole for the necklace, the little ring for the necklace, and I've turned it into a photo frame. I cut a face of a woman and glued it down in the middle, and then I created a backing so it will stand. And I did the same with this bezel. It has an oval shape, and I'm going to glue that down too. Have another woman's face there, glued down to the front. And then I created these small bottles from beads. You have a large bead on the bottom, and then a smaller bead on the top that looks like the lid of the bottle. See? So they look like bottles, right? All you need is, unless of course you have very, very small bottles. I didn't have any bottles, so I created them for beads. And then I have another bead that looks like a glass that I add here on my vanity. And I've also created two little tiny paper envelopes. But first, this is the boyfriend's photo that I'm gonna glue down to the front of the mirror. Remember, we used to do that, glue down photos on the mirror. I cut all these faces from an ephemera paper by Spellbinders, and these are my two little tiny envelopes. Of course, you can use ready-made envelopes. I didn't have such small ones, so I just folded them from scraps of paper. And I also have a tiny key. It's gonna go on the vanity as well. So basically you can keep on adding more embellishments. You can add flowers or whatever you want, but mine is done. So I want to thank you very much for joining me. I had a lot of fun creating this. Let's see it up close. This is how it looks. These are all the nice embellishments with the envelopes and the key and the photos and the mirror and the bottles and the little legs and the drawers. Try to create a vanity like this. It's so much fun. So I want to thank everyone for joining me. Have a great weekend, you guys. Create and have fun. See you all next time. Bye.